What's up, guys? Welcome into MLB DFS Live. I'm your host, Ben Hosser, joined by Justin Bales. Monday, April 26th. Bales, we've been on quite the run here in baseball. Been doing really good, so I'm excited to attack this slate tonight. We have a ton of pitching to go over. Not a ton of aces. Like sometimes we get those slates where it's Bauer, Bieber, Garrett Cole, like all in the same slate. It's not really that, but there's a ton of guys that I think you can make a case for and just good real life pitchers on the slate. So I think it's a fun overall slate. It also hurts the offensive sides. There's no huge totals out there betting wise because a lot of these pitchers are pretty good in real life. So I think that's going to make stacking interesting. What's your thoughts on the slate in general?
Yeah, I think it's a good slate. I think pitcher seems relatively obvious. I think there's probably three or four options that you're more or less deciding in cash games, but that kind of bumps everyone towards tournament option. And because there's so many good pitchers, you're going to get a really good option, super low owned, just because people obviously like playing like the top of the top, like Corbin Burns. We'll talk about him, but I do think that there's a lot of ways you can go for tournaments tonight.
Yeah, so we'll dive right in here. We'll start off talking about these pitchers. You can see the top two projected pitchers that we have in our projections portal: Corbin Burns, Trevor Rogers. I think those are two guys I wrote up today. I think those are the two best plays on the slate. Burns, don't really need to dive into too much there. I think as of this moment, he's probably the fifth best pitcher in baseball the way he's throwing right now. Obviously, a good matchup against Miami. So I think he's very clearly the best play today. And then there's a bunch of guys that you could make the case for. Rogers is probably my favorite just because, one, he's looked really good. Basically, since they called him up, he played a little bit last year, but he's looked really good this season. This Brewers lineup is just terrible, man. I was joking around with one of our subscribers in Discord earlier that is a Brewers fan, but I mean, obviously, Yelich isn't going to be in the lineup. He is a lefty, but still, that's one of the best hitters in baseball, right? So taking him
Mhm.
out of there is a big deal. But there's just no who are you scared of in this lineup against left-handed pitching? Garcia is probably the one guy you can make a case for, and there's just no one really that you fear in this lineup right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think Garcia is probably like the guy that you would kind of worry about, but do you really care that much? Because, he's a good hitter, but he's not really going to put fear into anyone. And if you're talking like Avisail Garcia is the one guy that you're scared of, they can literally just pitch around him if they want to. And realistically, he's not really a guy that you're going to pitch around at all.
Yeah, even someone like Keston Hira hasn't hit lefties as well as he's hit righties early on in his MLB career. And then you just have a bunch of lefties. Like all the guys, at least in their projected lineup, we'll have to wait and see what they come out with. But most of the guys at the top of their lineup are going to be left-handed. So I don't know. That's just a bad lineup. So it does worry me when a young pitcher, because Rogers is not prone to like a blow-up game, right? He's only 23 years old. So it worries me when those guys get a bunch of ownership, but the matchup's really good. So I think for cash games, you probably don't have to overthink it. You can just play those two. In terms of pivots off of Rogers, I know you're a big Zach Wheeler guy, so I'll talk to you about him. You have Charlie Morton right there at 8K, so he's 400 below Rogers. And then there's some other guys that you could make a case for as well. So outside of Burns and Rogers, what pitchers are you looking at in the mid tier?
I actually feel like you think that Rogers is going to be chalky.
Yeah, I think. I mean, him and Morton might be pretty close. I have not checked update any ownership projections today, but I'm assuming Rogers and Morton, one of those two will be really high owned. But I am assuming they'll be somewhat close.
I would just assume that, like in that range, I would think that Charlie Morton gets the highest ownership, and then I would think that Anthony Desclafani gets more ownership than Rogers too.
Um,
Pretty big
Morton.
favorite, gets Colorado in San Francisco, which is a super pitcher friendly stadium, and the Rockies implied team total is 3.3. It's so low.
Yeah, I mean, when I check, I'm gonna try and pull up and see what we have for projected ownership right now. If that was the
For what it's worth, I
case,
haven't looked at
yeah,
ownership at all.
I'm gonna try and look here. But if that's the case, I would be obviously more interested in Rodgers. But I don't think it'll be a secret. Um, but yeah, I mean Morton's already been chalk a couple times this year, so I guess it wouldn't shock me if he ended up being slightly more. But I think that'll be the top three. Just because DeSclafani's 7,900, like it's not like Morton's 100 more and Rodgers is 500 more, so it's not like if he was in the 6K range, then I would probably say yes. But
I would just say because he's such a big favorite. Like, don't get me wrong. I think people play Charlie. I think the chalk pairing, if I had a guess, was going to be Corbin Burns and Charlie Morton. I just feel like people will probably drop down and take the 500 saving based more or less on the Vegas line over Trevor Rogers because I think people, even on DraftKings, kind of value the win for more than it's actually worth because 4 points really doesn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things in cash, where you can play two pitchers against each other. But I feel like people like the safer route where they feel like they can get 2 wins if they play someone like DeSclafani, Burns, versus using Burns and Rogers against each other.
yeah, I do agree that people don't like to use pitchers against each other. I think it was Friday night. No, Saturday night. Whichever night I had a really, really big night. I was in second place in like every contest I was in until Fernando Tatis Jr. hit his second home run of the night pretty late. But I used Gossman and Pablo Lopez against each other. Rube and I have talked about that on this stream before. I don't really, on DraftKings, I don't care. Like you said, 4 points is not a huge deal at all. So I don't care about using guys against each other. And I honestly think it's a good move in tournaments. Like you said, since people don't like to do that, I think there's an edge in stacking them together if it's a good spot. But who do you want to play? Like, are you on Wheeler today, or are you avoiding him?
I think Wheeler's fine just because, St. Louis's offense, you're not really going to be overly scared of, especially because they have so many right-handed bats. I think on the other side of that, Adam Wainwright is honestly one of my favorite pitchers tonight. The dude, I don't get me wrong, he could get absolutely blown up. The Phillies offense has a lot of upside in it. It also has a ridiculous amount of strikeouts. Wainwright, for whatever reason, is actually the favorite in this game, even with Wheeler on the mound. So I don't know, dude. He's 7,200. If you look at his metrics, he's actually thrown extremely well this year. I think his xFIP is below 4. His strikeout rate's up compared to usual. It's still not, overly high or anything, but I'm more or less banking on him getting strikeouts based on the matchup versus him just overpowering people. I don't know. Are you like completely against Wainwright? Because I know for like the last 3 seasons, everyone's just been like, that dude's dust. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I've thought it too, but when you look into his advanced metrics and everything, it's not bad. He legitimately hasn't been bad. I don't think he's posted a single season in his entire career over like a 4.45 xFIP or something. And that was, I think, years ago, like one of his first years.
Yeah, so I'm not against him. I don't know if I'm going to play him in DFS, but we're in a season-long league. It's like me, Rube, Sam, a bunch of our subscribers, and then some of my family members. It's a points league, so it's similar to fantasy football. It's not like a traditional fantasy baseball scoring, but you get actual like fantasy points like DraftKings, but a little bit lower scoring. But I actually picked Wainwright up this week, and I'm starting him because he has 2 starts. So yeah,
this is a good one too.
Hopefully he
He's
does
got
do
the
well
Vegas
since
line.
I've got the season-long mojo going, so hopefully he does do good.
Yeah, I honestly think he's a good play. I think you can take a shot on Urquidy or Mania. I think they're both more or less fine. I do think that they come with quite a bit of risk, and I don't necessarily know if I really want to pay the 8.2 or 7.8 for them when you have guys like DeSclafani or Charlie Morton right around them. You could go up to Trevor Rogers, obviously. But because there's so many options that, feel like better plays than them, I do think that they're going to go super low owned, and they do come with some upside.
Yeah. 2 guys I like in tournaments who we haven't mentioned. Julio Urias, he's 9,700 on DraftKings, will not be owned again. I don't think he was really even owned in a couple of his starts this year. But he finally had that big strikeout game. His last start out, 11 strikeouts. Obviously, it was a good matchup against Seattle, but the Reds are a little bit tougher. But I do think he's a good tournament play. He's similar to Dustin May. Like, this guy's been around for years, right? He came up in like 2017, but he's only like 24 years old because he came up so young. So he still, can develop better strikeout ability. And I think he's like, when you actually watch him pitch in real life, I know he doesn't ever put up huge K numbers, but I don't know how guys hit him just because he's just such a good real life pitcher. Obviously, he got to show that off in the World Series last year, but I am interested in him in tournaments. And then Shohei Ohtani, I can't play him in cash games, but I think for tournaments, he's a really good play, honestly. He has the strikeout upside, good matchup against Texas. If you get him on a start where he doesn't walk a bunch of people, I think he's going to have a really big score.
Yeah, I'm fine with both of those. I think my main issue is that if I'm paying up for Urias, I'm just going to Corbin Burns. Like, I get that the ownership's
Well, I
there.
think for tournaments, it would be like playing those two together if you could find some value.
I think that makes sense. It feels like Corbin Burns is basically just going to be in my lineups tonight.
No, I agree with you. What's your take on Ohtani, real quick?
Yeah, I like him. I think he's a really good pitcher. I like the matchup against Texas. If you told me that you were going to use him in cash, I wouldn't really try to talk you off of it. But I agree he's probably better suited, especially on this slate for tournaments. But a really good play, I think.
Yeah. I mean, he has a similar ceiling to Rogers. Rogers has a longer leash because, I don't know, I think he just went like 80 pitches in his last start. Ohtani, that is. Don't know how long the leash is. Or maybe it was like 75. It was like between 75 and 80, I think, without checking. So I don't think he has a long leash, but I think strikeout-wise, they have similar upside. One's obviously more expensive and going to have way more ownership. So I'm good with Ohtani in tournaments. I think it's a really good play.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think his leash being short is the way that I also feel about Urias, especially spending 9.7 for him. Like,
Yeah.
I know he threw 95 against the Nationals early in the year, but how often is that going to happen? It doesn't seem like they really want him getting over 90.
Yeah, the only difference for me there is that Urias can be really efficient. So sometimes he can go a couple innings. Not that Ohtani can't, but Ohtani's walk rate for his career right now when he's pitching is almost 16%, and he walked six, 7 batters in that last start. So that can really ramp up his pitch count. Like, that's the reason he went 4 innings, not really because he was limited. Like, even 80 pitches is fine, but 80 pitches for Urias could get you like 7 innings sometimes, whereas Ohtani like really needs to cut down on the walks if that's the case.
Well, I think you can add strikeouts in there too. Like, everyone wants strikeouts, and I get it.
Yeah.
I want strikeouts too. I would much rather strikeouts than anything else. But remember, generally, players aren't getting 3-pitch strikeouts. Usually they're going a little bit deeper into the count. And when you have walk issues where you're going to have at least 4 pitches, generally you're not going to have a 4-pitch walk either. So basically 5 or more pitches on the walk, also getting a bunch of strikeouts is really going to limit the amount of innings you can throw.
Yeah. All right. I think we covered pitcher pretty well. I think you can make the case for a lot of these guys, man, especially if you don't want to use Rogers, even if you don't want to use Morton, I don't have a problem with using a bunch of these guys in tournaments. I think it's a really interesting slate. I'll cover it more in final thoughts, but I think we can move on. We'll talk some stacks real quick here. Who are your favorite stacks on the slate? Like I said, I think with how good some of these pitchers are, it's not a great stacking slate. You want to stack in tournaments, I feel like, but at the same time, I don't hate it if you try and just search for some home runs tonight. If I was picking stacks in terms of ownership, I think the Yankees will be popular against Matt Harvey. I think the Astros, they have a pretty big total against Sheffield, will be popular. And then I like the A's a lot. I know you like to play the A's in DFS. I like to play them against lefties. And they fit well with tournaments just because when they go off, they really go off. But they are risky because they can strike out a lot.
That's actually pretty funny because I was going to say, I think the highest owned stacks I would be going back and forth between the Yankees and the Astros. I'm not a Sheffield guy. I don't think that he's good. I think that Houston has a team that can really get to him. Obviously, Matt Harvey. I don't know if you've looked into his advanced metrics this year, but again, they actually look good, and
Yeah,
I'm
he's
pretty
not
sure he's
bad.
just.
He's not as bad
I
as
don't
people
think they
make him
hold.
out to be.
Yeah, I still think he's, relatively bad. I don't think that those metrics hold. There's not really any reason to believe he's going to be better than he's been in the last couple of years, but I do think the Yankees make a really good stack. And then I think that the Angels probably also get some ownership just because Lyles isn't overly good. My tournament stack was going to be the Oakland A's, so I think you absolutely nailed that. Hill hasn't looked great. I would need to check this, but I think one of my major concerns with the A's is that Rich Hill is actually a reverse splits pitcher. And I don't know how much I want to weigh that in because obviously Oakland's just good against left-handed pitching. So I do think that they're still stackable. I think they have a few really good options, but I think they're probably my number one tournament stack. I think you can take a shot on like Baltimore with Garcia being such a fly ball pitcher and then playing in Baltimore. Um, I don't really have too many issues there, but they more or less are boom or bust. And Garcia is kind of like the top prospect where he's likely to struggle at times in the MLB, as we saw. I think he pitched in 2020. It was. I think he had 6 starts, and he kind of was a little up and down. But at the same time, he's still a top prospect, and it's not like Baltimore's offense is so good that there's no way that he can't just completely shut them down. So I think that's the riskier option, whereas I think that Oakland's a little bit safer.
Yeah, I pretty much agree there. I just pulled up. So since the start of 2020, Rich Hill, um, he's been worse against righties, like hard contact, 38.7% compared to 30%. He kind of is what he is. He gets hard hit to both sides though, and he can give up hard contact. So I think the A's are fine. We didn't talk about the Braves. I think the Braves will get attention, but the problem with the Braves on DraftKings, anyways, they're just super expensive, right? Acuna,
Mm-hmm.
Freeman, Ozzy Albies, Ozuna, these guys are all really expensive. So I think it's going to be hard to fit that full stack in. So I think cumulatively, the Brave stack will be low owned, but maybe one or two of their bats pick up some ownership in like cash games. Like Freeman, I'm sure, we'll get some attention put on because they're against a pretty bad righty. But I think overall that stack will be low owned, and I like it. Like if you can find two cheap pitchers and get that full stack in, I think that's interesting for tournaments. But following up on Harvey though, yeah, he actually has really good stuff, man. I mean, this guy was a really good pitcher at one point.
Mm-hmm.
He just got screwed with injuries, but he gets a lot of movement on his fastball. He gets a lot of ground balls to righties, and that's what makes him frustrating to stack against. Like you really just want to take lefties against him. The Yankees aren't exactly the team that's loaded with lefties that you want to use. And then he's going to get ground balls against righties. And if you look at guys like LeMahieu and Stanton, like over the last couple seasons, those guys have like pretty high ground ball rates against righties. So I don't think it's a good spot for the full stack. If you want to take like Hicks and Odor, if they're in the lineup, like those guys are fine. The lefties are fine, but I don't think I want to full stack the Yankees today. But that's just me.
I can guarantee you, and we'll see tonight when you post your core. Roughneck Odor is in your
Yeah,
lineup.
dude, that's my boy. I
Think you've
I've
played him
played
every
him
day
every
so
day.
far.
Yes, he did hit a home run for me once. Yeah, he's batting cleanup tonight, so sign me up. He will be in my lineup. You're correct. But yeah, I've actually been playing him like the whole season, so I got that good mojo going. There's like, oh yeah, Hicks is in the lineup. He's just at the bottom. So those two are good cash game plays. But I mean, LeMahieu righty, Stan righty, Judge righty, Urshela righty. I mean, I don't know if
Basically
it's
everyone, really.
yeah, I don't know if it's that great of a spot relative to the ownership.
No, I agree, especially because it's not like this Yankees team is so hot right now that like it's a terrible idea to fade them. They legit have really, really struggled.
Yeah, they're just so streaky, man. Baltimore, I think, was an interesting call. Uh, I wouldn't hate getting talked into that in tournaments. And then I think both sides, I don't have much conviction here, but I'm just mentioning, like, in terms of spots, I think could win you tournaments. Either side of the Philly Cardinals game, if one of those teams pop off, they're not going to be owned. And I think they
Hmm.
both obviously they have it in the tank against those pitchers that they could have a good day. Like that could be a tournament winning stack one side of that game if you feel better about one.
Weird for you to be going against Adam Wainwright like that, but
I know it's not like they're bad. I mean, Wainwright it does feel like he never really gets blown up. He had that one really bad start at his first start of the year, but
mhm.
I mean
No,
he
I
doesn't really
agree.
get blown up.
Both teams have a lot of upside, and I think Wainwright has given up. I think it's a home run in 3 of his 4 starts, maybe all 4 of them. But I think I'm pretty sure he has at least 1 home run in 3 of his 4 starts. So, and it's not like he's generally throwing like 7, 8 innings where like one isn't bad. He usually throws like what 5, 6 innings.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna go position by position. If you guys have questions, go ahead, drop those in. We will start at catcher. I'm probably going to be trying to save per usual at catcher today. Once in a while, we get those slates where we have like a really cheap pitcher, and I can actually spend up at catcher. Like I got to play Real Muto the other night on Saturday night, so that was nice because normally I never spend up at catcher, but
Mm-hmm.
probably going to be trying to save. I don't know if anyone sticks out to you here. I don't see anyone super cheap that's even projecting to get in the lineup. You have to go down to like Stevenson at 3,500, Severino at 3,600, and Mike Zunino were the two that stuck out to me for cash games. I think Zunino obviously at least has power. So
Yeah, I think as long as he's in the lineup, I think Maldonado at 3,100 is a really good option. And then the other two that stuck out play against each other. It's Mike Zunino, which you talked about, and I think that Sean Murphy. He's hitting sixth. He's only
yeah, he's in the lineup.
3,900. So yeah, it's not like it's ridiculously expensive or anything. If I spend up for a catcher, though, I feel like it almost has to be Travis d'Arnaud.
Yeah, I would agree with that for spending up.
But that's probably my pool. I think Maldonado, as long as he's in the lineup, makes a really good salary relief option. And then just deciding between Murphy and Zunino, I think both of those are really solid plays.
Yep. All right, first base, cash games. Like I said, I think Freeman. It would be great to get up to him in cash if you can. If I could pick one spend up on the slate, it's probably going to be him or Trout. Um, we didn't talk about the Angels as a stack. I do think they take a hit with Ohtani, pitching.
Mm-hmm.
So that does suck. But yeah, Trout or Freeman probably will be in my lineup. It's just picking one of them. But Freeman, obviously, great play. Matt Olson, I like to play Matt Olson lefty on lefty because people just avoid it. But he hits lefties well, and there's always a bullpen, right? He's not going to face a lefty the entire game. So I like those two. Yandy Diaz is cheap if you want some value, trying to look for some power, but I don't want to play him in cash games. I don't think.
Yeah, I think my favorite option actually might be Matt Olson, just because people probably avoid it, and we talked about Hill being bad against lefties. I do think that Yuli Gurriel makes a lot of sense in a good matchup. I think that Jared Walsh is probably should be pretty popular. He's way too cheap at 4,300, and obviously gets the good matchup against Lyles. Um, if you want if you want someone that's like way cheaper, assuming he's in the lineup, Wilmer Flores gets Austin Gomber, so I will play Wilmer Flores basically anytime he plays a left-handed pitcher. But man, this just feels like a Matt Olson type night to me.
Yeah, I like Olson. It's tough out here right now picking these bats. We like a lot of these pitchers. There's just not a ton of bats like I feel super great about, which is why I think it's fine. Mm-hmm. You don't have to full stack tonight. I don't think. I think you can just take a couple guys that you think can hit home runs like Matt Olson. But we can move to second. I mean, you already alluded to it. Rougned Odor will be in my core plays tonight. He is 3,100 batting cleanup. That's my boy. So I'll be locking him in. Outside of him, though, I think Jed Lowry is a good value at 4,200. Underrated hitter, came through for us on Saturday with that big 3-run home run. Yep. He's just underrated. I think he's probably, closer to like a $4,600 hitter. So you get him at a little bit of a discount, and we both like the A's today.
Yeah, I like him up and down on whether I want to play Jed Lowry tonight. But man, he's so underrated. He's actually really good and super cheap. I feel like I've played him like 10 times already this season. Like your Odor is my Jed
Jet
Lowry at
Lowry,
this
yeah.
point. I've been playing him constantly. I feel like Odor and Lowry are like by far the best two options. There's not even, I guess I would say like Ozzy Albies, but I
Yeah.
don't see paying 5,300 for him when I can pay like 31 for Odor and basically get the same upside because of the matchup. Um, that might actually be more or less it of what I'm looking at here. I guess you could take a shot on like Gavin Lux, assuming he's in the lineup, but even that I don't really love.
Yeah, I agree. We'll segue to third here, and I do want to mention if you can't fit in Chapman, so I think Chapman is obviously a great option. He's 4,900 on DraftKings. If you can't quite fit him, you can use Odor at third base, and then you could use Jed Lowry at second. So that might work out. But outside of Matt Chapman, Alec Boehm, 3,800. Uh,
So
we like Wainwright tonight, but Alec Boehm is just a good hitter. Anytime he's below 4K, I'm interested. Watching those games in Coors Field, he's like, it just feels like he's so close to a big night. He was warning track flyouts, hitting the ball really hard right at people. So it does feel like the big game for him is coming. Don't know if it's going to be tonight, but as long as he's under 4K, I will be interested in him. And he does have power, so I'm cool with him as like a one-off.
yeah, I completely agree. I think if you want to spend up, I think that Matt Chapman is probably my favorite, but I think you could also use Alex Bregman. I have no issues there. He's 100 more. Gio Urshela at 3,400, I think is just too cheap. It's kind of dumb. Although I would play Odor above him. I guess you would have if you're using Odor at second, you could use Urshela here to get the 4-5 there. I also think that you can use either Wilmer Flores or Evan Longoria, depending on who's in the lineup, because I believe they're both questionable right now. And then just in terms of if you're looking for a home run, I think that Maikel Franco for 3,500 is interesting just because we know that Garcia is a fly ball pitcher and Franco does have a lot of power.
Yep. There is some value at third. If you, I don't want to go out of my way to pick on Urias because I really respect him, but Blandino is leading off for the Reds. He's 2,400, so he might end up popping in projections or just pick up, 10-15% ownership just because he's 2,400 and leading off. So not someone I would want to one-off in tournaments, but for cash games, if you really like your lineup, I would be fine if you just have to plug him in.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, shortstop Correa. I'm assuming he leads off again, so it would be great to get him at 5,400 if you can. Corey Seager, 5,100, great play against Molly. Molly's really good, but he does struggle with lefties. If he's going to get beat, it's probably going to be by lefty, and I respect Corey Seager a lot. So I'm fine with those two guys as spend-ups. Where are you going? I mean, outside of those two, which are kind of the obvious ones, it might be Freddie Galvis, man, 3,600. He always seems to come through with like a low-owned home run, I swear. I don't know why. I always feel like he hits a low-owned home run, and he's only 3,600. Unless you want to go with Nico Horner, who's 2,700 and leading off for the Cubs. I think that's like probably the best two value options today.
Yep, I think I agree. I'll add Jose Iglesias, 3,100. I don't love it because he hits so late, but like Freddie Galvis is hitting eighth in the lineup anyway, so not too much of a difference there. I think I probably prefer Horner slightly to Iglesias, but I don't know. I feel like you're going to want to try to get to Correa or Seager here because they're just like head and shoulders above everyone else.
Yeah, so I just plugged in real quick DraftKings, Corbin Burns, Trevor Rogers, Rougned Odor, and Nico Horner leaves you with $4,200 per position. So
yeah, that's pretty easy.
Pretty good. Yeah. All right, we'll finish up at outfield. Obviously, outfield's always stacked, right? If you were spending up, assuming Trout is in the lineup, if you were spending up on one outfielder tonight, who would it be?
Probably Trout. I think Acuna's fine. I have absolutely no issues with him. I don't know. Picking between the only a slight lean there.
Yeah, it's probably Trout for me as well, but it is close. Dropping down a little bit, Is there anyone where you have a ton of conviction around here? I think both, like the A's guys and that low 4K tier Canna, Ramon Laureano, those guys are really good plays. Um, I don't see anyone in the low 4K tier I would consider a lock, but I really like those A's guys. I honestly like Mitch Haniger. I know it's righty on righty, but I like Mitch Haniger at 4K as well.
I think they're all pretty fine. I think at 43, Randy
Yeah, Rosarena.
Rosarena.
Anytime he
Yeah.
does something, I just think back to that picture. I think it was Brett Phillips in the World Series. He just had the like Randy hits a home run and he just has the sign and it's just Randy and just rakes all day.
I
I love the
think
acronym. It's fantastic.
Manuel Margot also at 2,700. He's hitting fourth. So I mean,
Yeah, he'll be
I don't
chalk.
really.
He'll be chalk at that price. Batting fourth,
You think
100%.
he is?
Yeah, he'll be chalky. I mean, like it might not be out of control. Like it might be higher in cash games and tournaments, but so fitting with that. So if you plug in those two pitchers, you put Odor in, you put Nico Horner in, and then you plug in how much is he? 24? 28?
He's 27, but I don't
27.
think
Okay.
that he's necessarily going to end up chalk just because DJ Stewart's 28 and Austin Hayes, who he hit 2 homers yesterday, didn't he? He's 26. So like
Yeah,
there's a lot
Stewart's a
around
good
there.
play. I like DJ Stewart. But okay, but anyway, so if you put one of those high 2K outfielders in with Horner, Odor, and those two pitchers, you have 4,500. You could play literally anyone you want.
Yeah, that's probably where most people are going to go, as they more or less should.
But I mean, if you're one-offing, so if you have no other Rays in your lineup, right? And you have no
Mhm.
other Orioles, like if you check ownership projections before lock and you see Margot's, projecting 12% ownership and DJ Stewart's projecting 8%, I would rather play DJ Stewart because they're similar players. Like they need a home run really probably to pay off value, and one is significantly lower owned. I would take the lower owned one.
Yeah, I think I would agree. Honestly, DJ Stewart's kind of my dude, so I would probably play
Yeah,
him
and I,
regardless
I would
of
rather pick on
anything. But
Garcia than Manaea as of right now. I think, anyways. So.
yeah, especially because don't get me wrong, too. Do what you want them to do. They probably need a home run, but DJ Stewart isn't bad. He's relatively consistent for fantasy, and still under 3K just feels so disrespectful.
Yeah, a couple more guys in the 3K tier I like before we skate out of here. Dylan Carlson's 3,300. He's up to second in the order today. So I like that for the price. And Guillermo Heredia will get no ownership at all because he's batting eighth, but you can get some low owned exposure to the Braves. He actually has decent pop against righties, has 2 home runs on the year. If you want some low owned Braves exposure, that would be fine. It's only 3,400.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think at 3,500, Austin Slater is a good option too. Obviously, gets the lefty matchup against Gomber.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. Before we head out, Bills, I need a home run call. I did hit Giancarlo Stanton on Friday. We're gonna start keeping track of this. So we used to keep track of it, and now we never keep track of it. So we're gonna start keeping track of this. I did, of course. I want to start keeping track when I got one right. Don't confuse them.
We'll start keeping track now.
Yeah. Well, okay. We'll start keeping track today. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
All right. And no ridiculous picks where you are picking Mike Trout and stuff.
No, I will say the Stanton one was not. The Stanton one was not really cheese though, because he was in like a 3 for 34 stretch going into that game.
Yeah, I think Stanton would have been fine. I'm going Austin Slater tonight. He gets the job done.
All right. I mean, you know who I'm taking. It's Rougned Odor, right? This is a lock. This is a lock. Lock it in. Home run.
It's a good call. That's a really good call.
Hopefully in the first inning, just a grand slam in the first inning. Just get the night started off right.
Yeah, I mean,
it'll
be a leadoff
because they're gonna bat in the top. They're gonna be up in the top of the first, and we just get maybe like a couple walks, a bloop single, and then just Odor grand slam top of the first. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I like where this is heading.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. Head over to the website dfskarma.com for all of your DFS needs. We have free content every day. We still have a promo code out, MLB 2021, for the remainder of April. Gets you 25% off your first month of MLB core plays, which have been on fire. And you can still get some free bets. BetKarma.com. Tomorrow is Tuesday, so I will be back tomorrow. Good luck tonight, guys.